Valance defeated! D-E-F-E!
The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, 1962, wasn't just a classic Western. It was a collision of egos, legends, and secrets Hollywood tried to bury. What happened behind the camera is stranger and more dramatic than anything shown on screen. Fact 1.
What are you trying to tell me?
I'm telling you that Hallie's my girl.
John Ford was already a legend when filming began, but age had made him sharper, colder, and even more unpredictable. He ruled the set like a war general who tolerated no weakness. Ford expected actors to perform without question, and he used silence as a weapon. When an actor asked too many questions, Ford would stare at them without blinking until they backed down. James Stewart tried suggesting a different line reading once. Ford glared and said, "You don't like it? Go direct your own film." Even John Wayne, who had worked with Ford for decades, kept his distance during tense moments. Ford insulted actors if he thought it would make them tougher. He once told Stewart, "You don't know a damn thing about acting, but you're all I've got." Crew members whispered that Ford enjoyed provoking emotional reactions. His harsh methods pushed the cast to the edge, but the raw tension shows in every frame. Stewart later admitted that Ford's cruelty created some of his strongest work. The intimidation became part of the film's DNA. Fact 2.
Shotgun, shuck your shells.
Instead of constructing a brand new Western town, the crew reused an old Paramount backlot set built decades earlier. Layers of history were hidden beneath the wooden boards and storefronts. When the art department began rebuilding Shinbone, they found props from other classic films buried in walls and floors. Old signage, broken stagecoach parts, and rusted lanterns were uncovered during construction. Ford insisted they leave some of those relics in place as ghosts of the Old West. The streets were widened to make room for the film's large cast and action scenes. Dust machines coated every plank and window until the town looked appropriately weathered. Extras wandered the set even off camera, giving it the feel of a real frontier community. At night, the crew said the town creaked like something alive. The mix of old structures and new additions created a layered authenticity no modern set could replicate. Shinbone wasn't just built, it was unearthed. The past literally shaped the world of the film. Fact 3.
Donovan. Tom Donovan.
John Wayne was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, yet he was insecure about his character in this film. He felt Tom Donovan wasn't the hero audiences expected him to be. Wayne complained privately that the story favored James Stewart's character too heavily. He believed Ford was giving too much emotional weight to Stewart. Ford ignored his protests and told him, "You'll do it because you're right for it." Wayne grumbled throughout rehearsals but never walked off set. He respected Ford too deeply to challenge him openly. Ironically, his frustration fueled his performance, adding layers of jealousy and bitterness that fit the character perfectly. Wayne once told a friend he didn't understand why people loved the film so much, but after the premiere, fans praised him for one of his most complex roles. Even critics said Wayne had rarely been this vulnerable on screen. In the end, his resentment became part of the magic. The tension between legend and reality drove the film's emotional power. Fact 4.
It's a poor joke, but eat it! Eat it!
Most audiences assume the black and white look was an artistic decision, but the real reason was far more unusual. Paramount wanted to save money by reusing old lighting equipment that wasn't suited for color film. Ford agreed, saying the story felt more honest without flashy colors. He believed Westerns had become too polished, too pretty, too artificial. Black and white made the film look harsher, more realistic, more like a memory. Stewart supported the decision, arguing that the moral ambiguity of the story demanded a stripped-down style. The monochrome palette also helped hide the actors' ages, especially since Stewart and Wayne were significantly older than their characters. Makeup artists said color would have revealed every wrinkle and shadow. The stark lighting created a noir-like mood that no one expected from a Western. And ironically, the limitations turned into one of the film's greatest strengths. What began as a budget decision evolved into a timeless aesthetic. Fact 5. Lee Marvin's performance as Liberty Valance was so menacing because he refused to break character off camera. He wandered the set acting aggressive, unpredictable, and confrontational. Crew members avoided making eye contact with him. Marvin snapped his whip against walls and posts to keep the sound in his muscles. He kept his voice low and cold, speaking only when necessary. During meals, he sat alone at a corner table, glaring at anyone who approached. Even John Wayne said Marvin made him uneasy on set. In saloon scenes, his drunken behavior wasn't always acting. Marvin was known for drinking heavily during production, but the alcohol only made him more intimidating. Ford didn't intervene, believing the intensity improved the performance. And he wasn't wrong. Marvin's version of Liberty Valance became one of the most chilling villains in Western history. His commitment blurred the line between actor and outlaw, and it gave the film a darkness that lingers long after the credits roll. Fact 6.
This kind, dude.
James Stewart was already in his 50s when he played Ransom Stoddard, a character meant to be in his early 30s, and everyone on set knew it. Makeup artists worked overtime trying to soften his age lines, but under the harsh lights, nothing could hide reality. Stewart himself joked that he was the oldest young lawyer west of the Mississippi. Ford teased him relentlessly about it, often calling him Grandpa between takes. Stewart didn't complain, but he grew self-conscious when scenes required youthful energy. Costume designers adjusted his wardrobe to hide stiffness in his movements. In close-ups, cinematographers used softer lenses to blur his features. Ford refused to change the script, insisting Stewart's maturity added gravitas to the character. Some cast members thought the age gap between Stewart and Vera Miles was too noticeable, but Stewart's performance was so heartfelt that audiences quickly forgot the mismatch. Critics later praised him for balancing vulnerability and courage. His age, rather than a flaw, gave the character unexpected depth. In the end, what should have been a liability became part of the film's strange charm. Fact 7. Ford's directing style was notoriously brutal, but on this film it reached new levels. He demanded absolute obedience from his crew, and he didn't hesitate to humiliate anyone who fell short. If a cameraman asked for clarification, Ford barked, "You're supposed to know that already." When a lighting technician set a lamp incorrectly, Ford threw his hat on the ground and kicked it across the set. Crew members whispered warnings to newcomers. "Don't look him in the eyes unless spoken to." Ford's temper created an atmosphere of constant tension. Yet strangely, this pressure made everyone work faster and sharper. The crew learned to anticipate his needs without speaking. Ford rewarded good work with silence, not praise. Some days he walked the set with cold fury, other days with dry humor. Many believed he enjoyed unpredictability as a form of control. But despite the stress, everyone acknowledged one truth. The man knew how to make masterpieces. His harshness shaped the film's precision. Every camera angle, every shadow, every beat of silence. And for better or worse, his iron grip defined the final product. Fact 8.
When the legend becomes fact, print the legend. He's right, Rance.
One of the most iconic lines in cinema, "When the legend becomes fact, print the legend," didn't originate in the script. It came from an argument between Ford and a journalist years earlier. The journalist accused Ford of glorifying the West with romantic myths instead of historical accuracy. Ford snapped back, "People don't want the facts, they want the legend." The phrase stuck with him, and he shared it with screenwriter James Bella during early story discussions. Bella reworked the line and placed it in the script as a philosophical punchline. Stewart immediately recognized its brilliance and delivered it with quiet intensity. The line became the film's thesis, a commentary on how stories shape truth. Ford later admitted it was the most honest thing he ever put in a movie. Critics still quote it today whenever discussing myth-making in Hollywood. It's more than dialogue. It's Ford's confession about the power of narrative, and it remains the heartbeat of the entire film. Fact 9. The saloon where Liberty Valance terrorizes the townsfolk wasn't just a set, it was a soundstage experiment. Ford wanted the bar to feel claustrophobic, loud and dangerous. To achieve this, the sound team secretly reinforced the walls with wooden panels designed to amplify echoes. Every stomp, glass slam, and whip crack ricocheted through the room. Marvin's boots sounded heavier, Stewart's nervous breaths seemed louder, and even minor scuffles felt violent. Actors often complained that the saloon felt like an acoustic trap, but Ford loved it. He believed the echo emphasized the film's tension and moral pressure. The bartender's lines were recorded multiple times to capture the room's natural reverberation. The crew even sprinkled dust on the floorboards to soften footsteps when needed. In the final cut, the saloon scenes pulse with raw intensity. Viewers feel trapped, exactly how Ford intended. The sound design turned a simple barroom into a character of its own, shaping the emotional weight of every confrontation. Fact 10. Ford designed the shootout between Donovan and Liberty Valance with unusual secrecy. Instead of rehearsing the scene extensively, he only walked the actors through it once. He wanted their reactions to feel authentic, tense, and slightly confused, just like a real street duel. He kept camera placements hidden until the last moment. Stewart didn't even know which angles Ford planned to use. When filming began, Ford barked, "Action!" and let events unfold with minimal direction. Marvin improvised several aggressive movements, throwing Stewart off balance. Wayne's entrance was timed without warning, creating genuine surprise. After the first take, Ford said nothing. Everyone assumed they had failed. Then he muttered, "That's it. Print it." The cast stood stunned, unsure what had just happened. When they finally saw the edited scene, they understood Ford's method. Raw fear, confusion, and instinct. The shootout wasn't polished. It was human. That chaotic authenticity is why the moment remains unforgettable. Fact 11. Vera Miles entered the production excited, but quickly realized she was stepping into a silent battlefield between two titans, John Wayne and James Stewart. Both men respected her, but each wanted the emotional center of the story to tilt in their direction. During early table reads, Miles noticed Wayne watching Stewart's choices with thinly veiled frustration. Stewart, meanwhile, felt self-conscious, acting romantic opposite an older colleague. Ford didn't help the tension. He deliberately kept Miles in the dark about certain emotional beats to provoke spontaneous reactions. She felt pulled between two performances with wildly different energies. Some days, Wayne treated her like a longtime friend. Other days, he barely spoke. Stewart, soft-spoken and gentle, tried to keep things calm, but Ford often snapped at him in front of her. Miles later said she used this emotional tug-of-war to shape Hallie's uncertainty. Her character's conflict became a mirror of the real-world friction around her. That tension bleeds into every close-up, giving Hallie's eyes a depth of longing and confusion that elevates the film. Without meaning to, the men around her created one of her most layered performances. Fact 12.
Peter, I'm not in the habit of eating my steak off the floor.
The famous birthday cake scene, one of the warmest moments in the film, almost didn't happen. Ford hated filming soft scenes and grew irritable anytime emotions softened. When the crew set up the table, Ford grumbled that it looked too pretty for this miserable town. He ordered the set decorators to dirty up plates, scratch the table, and dim the lamps. Stewart tried to lighten the mood by joking about his baking skills, but Ford snapped that Stewart couldn't even slice a cake convincingly. Wayne stepped in, offering to adjust blocking, and Ford barked, "You're not the director, I am." The room fell silent. Tension poisoned the atmosphere as the actors quietly returned to their marks. But something unexpected happened. The heaviness made the characters' forced celebration feel heartbreakingly real. When Stewart smiled through discomfort, it wasn't acting. It was survival. When Wayne stood in the doorway with a proud yet guarded expression, it reflected his real irritation. And when the final take was captured, Ford simply said, "Fine. Move on." What nearly fell apart became one of the film's most human moments. Fact 13. Stewart was known for naturalistic acting, but Ford hated anything that looked effortless. He believed good performances required struggle. In one simple scene, Stewart walking down a street, Ford demanded dozens of takes. Stewart asked what he was doing wrong, and Ford replied, "If I knew, you'd be done already." So Stewart repeated the walk. Too confident, too meek, too fast, too slow. Ford rejected every attempt without explanation. Crew members whispered that Ford was punishing Stewart for being too polite. Eventually, Stewart stopped asking questions and simply walked silently, distracted by exhaustion. That's when Ford yelled, "Cut! Print it!" Stewart realized the director wanted a sense of quiet frustration, something only fatigue could produce. The brief moment on film carries a subtle, emotional weight most viewers don't notice. Behind the calm facade, Stewart's body language shows strain, doubt, and weariness. Ford often tortured actors to extract truth. In this case, he turned a simple walk into a psychological minefield. And it worked. Fact 14. The dinner scene where the townspeople gather around Ransom Stoddard looks relaxed, but behind the scenes it was anything but. Ford scheduled it at the end of an exhausting 12-hour day, knowing fatigue would make the cast less self-conscious. By the time cameras rolled, actors were starving, sweaty, and half delirious. Stewart kept accidentally dropping utensils. Wayne couldn't stop sighing between takes. Marvin paced outside the set, cracking his knuckles loudly to stay in character. Ford encouraged the chaos. He told the extras to talk over each other, eat messily, and interrupt lines. Plate clatters and overlapping voices were intentionally left in the final audio. What looks like a natural dinner scene is actually barely controlled disorder. The cast later admitted they weren't acting hungry. They truly were. Their tired smiles and distracted glances become the scene's secret authenticity. Ford believed reality appeared when exhaustion took over. That philosophy shaped this scene into one of the most lived-in moments of the film. Fact 15. Executives felt the movie dragged in its final act and suggested removing Donovan's emotional farewell. They argued that audiences cared more about Stewart's character than Wayne's bittersweet ending. Ford exploded when he heard the idea. He insisted that Donovan's final scene was the heart of the film, the moment where the myth becomes truth. Wayne also fought to keep it, saying he had never played a scene with so much vulnerability. Stewart backed him, arguing the story made no sense without Donovan's sacrifice fully shown. The studio pushed again, offering to trim dialogue or shorten the pacing. Ford refused every compromise. When executives visited the editing room, Ford locked the door and continued cutting the film his way. Eventually, they relented. And when the film premiered, Donovan's final moments became the emotional anchor audiences remembered most. It changed Wayne's legacy, showing a side of him rarely seen. Cutting it would have gutted the film's soul. Ford protected it like a sacred memory and saved one of cinema's most powerful endings. Fact 16. John Wayne wasn't known for emotional vulnerability, and Ford knew it. When the script required Wayne to reveal heartbreak in Tom Donovan's final moments, Ford planned the scene with ruthless precision. He refused rehearsals, saying emotion couldn't survive repetition. Wayne arrived on set nervous, a rare sight for the Duke. Ford quietly positioned the camera, gave Wayne no notes, and simply said, "When I say action, it's all real." As the scene began, Wayne's posture wilted in a way audiences had never seen. His eyes softened, his shoulders dropped, and he spoke with a fragile humility completely foreign to his usual roles. Crew members watched in silence, stunned by the transformation. When Wayne finished the take, he looked to Ford for approval. Ford didn't say a word. He just turned to the cinematographer and said, "Print it." Wayne later admitted he didn't remember acting. He just felt something crack open inside him. That single take became one of the most emotionally raw moments in his entire career. Ford knew exactly how to break walls without saying a single harsh word. Fact 17. The funeral scene for Tom Donovan is quiet, somber, and strangely empty. And that emptiness was intentional. Ford told the cast he wanted the moment to feel like a forgotten memory, not a dramatic climax. But then he did something unexpected. He walked off set. Crew members looked around, unsure who was in charge. Stewart stood awkwardly by the coffin, while Miles tried to decide whether Hallie should cry or remain composed. Wayne sat in the corner, silently observing. After several minutes of confusion, Ford suddenly returned and shouted, "Roll camera!" The cast was caught completely off guard. Their unpreparedness created the stiff, uneasy body language seen in the final cut. Stewart's hesitance, Miles' conflicted expression, and the townspeople's awkward stillness weren't acting. They were genuine uncertainty. Ford wanted the funeral to feel uncomfortable, like a man who deserved more but received little. The result is a haunting, restrained moment that lingers long after the scene ends. Ford captured the truth of forgotten heroes: quiet, lonely, and uncelebrated. Fact 18. Although the movie is a Western, the newspaper office scenes were shot like a noir film. Ford wanted the space to feel claustrophobic, shadowy, and filled with moral ambiguity. He ordered the lighting team to create harsh contrast with deep blacks and sharp beams of light slicing across the actors' faces. Stewart noticed the mood shift immediately, calling it a different movie inside the movie. The clattering printing press in the background added both rhythm and tension. Each scene was rehearsed with quiet intensity, as if characters were confessing secrets rather than sharing information. Ford even instructed the actors to speak softer than usual, almost like whispering in a church. The cramped space forced Stewart to adjust his movements, giving his performance a restrained, almost haunted quality. Critics later compared the office scenes to classic noir interrogation rooms. Ford never acknowledged the stylistic choice. He simply said the room needed truth, not decoration. In the final cut, the office becomes the moral core of the film. It's where the legend is questioned, where facts are confronted, and where the truth becomes a burden. Fact 19. The steak dinner between Stewart, Wayne, and Miles looks playful, but behind the scenes it was fueled by genuine irritation. Ford forced the actors to eat plate after plate of real steak for continuity. By the time they reached the final takes, Stewart felt nauseous, Wayne was angry, and Miles was exhausted. The tension created a simmering energy Ford loved. When Stewart muttered his lines with polite frustration, it wasn't acting. He genuinely wanted the scene to end. When Wayne interrupted with gruff, teasing remarks, he was venting real annoyance. Miles tried to stay composed but kept breaking eye contact to hide her discomfort. Ford never called for a break. Instead, he encouraged the irritation by changing blocking mid-scene. Crew members struggled not to laugh at the escalating chaos. In the end, the discomfort made the scene strangely charming. It captured the messy human dynamic of the characters better than any written performance could. Ford believed that real emotions, even unpleasant ones, made better cinema. Here, he was absolutely right. Fact 20. The last scene of the film, Stewart staring out the train window while hearing the conductor say, "Nothing's too good for the man who shot Liberty Valance," carries a deeper meaning than most viewers realize. Ford crafted this moment as a quiet attack on Hollywood mythmaking. He believed the industry had become obsessed with heroes who never existed, stories that glossed over pain, and legends that erased real people. Stewart's expression isn't triumphant. It's hollow, conflicted, almost ashamed. Ford instructed Stewart to show a man who won everything and lost everything at the same time. The smoke from the train symbolizes the fog of memory swallowing the truth one last time. The conductor's praise represents society's need for clean, simple stories, even when they're lies. Ford held the final shot longer than usual, forcing the audience to sit with the discomfort. He wanted viewers to question the difference between honor and illusion. The film ends not with heroism, but with a whisper. Legends are powerful, but they are rarely honest. And that was Ford's final message to the world.